4 in the morning, Port Moresby, New Guinea, August 15th, 1942. The heat never leaves this place. Even before dawn, the air sits heavy, thick, like breathing through wet canvas. Major General Augustus Thorne doesn't sleep anymore. He sits at a plywood desk in a tent that smells of mildew and diesel fuel. Sweat stains darken his collar. His uniform hasn't been properly laundered in 3 weeks. Nobody's has. There are more important things than clean shirts when you're losing a war. On the desk, one photograph, sepia-toned, creased from handling, a young man in navy dress whites, Lieutenant David Thorne, 23 years old, dark hair like his father's, same stubborn jaw. The photo was taken 2 weeks before Pearl Harbor, before the USS Arizona became a tomb for 1,100 men, before Augustus Thorne became a man haunted by what he didn't do fast enough. He touches the frame just once, then pulls his hand back like it burned him. 6 o'clock brings the report he's been dreading. Major Reynolds delivers it personally. The young officer's face is grey. He's stopped sleeping too. Mission 23, sir. High-altitude precision bombing run. Target 3 Japanese destroyers, Solomon Sea. Thorne doesn't look up. Results? 19 bombs dropped from 20,000 feet. 0 hits. Closest impact? 270 yards off target. Our losses, Reynolds swallows. 3 bombers. Zeros caught them on the return leg. 18 men, sir. The tent goes quiet except for the sound of insects throwing themselves against the canvas. 18 more. Thorne stands. He's 56 but looks older. The Pacific ages men like nothing else. Malaria, dysentery, the weight of watching boys die while following orders that don't work. He walks to the map pinned on the tent wall. Red circles mark Japanese positions. They form a noose around the Solomon Islands, around Guadalcanal, around everything that matters. Blue X's mark where American bombers failed to hit their targets. The X's outnumber the circles 3-1. The Tokyo Express ran supplies again last night, Reynolds says quietly. 17th night in a row. They're moving troops like we're not even here. Thorne stares at the map. The Tokyo Express. Japanese destroyers running at 30 knots, untouchable, unstoppable. Every night they bring men and ammunition to kill Americans. Every day bombers fly up to 20,000 feet with their Norden bomb sights and their textbook procedures and their absolute faith that precision will win. Every day they miss. Sir? Reynolds shifts his weight. The crews are asking questions. They want to know when something changes. Something, Thorne says, changes today. He remembers the meeting, May 1942. The Pentagon. Polished floors and certainty. The Joint Chiefs had gathered in a room where the air conditioning worked and coffee came in real china cups. Generals with fruit salad ribbons and theories about air power. None of them had watched bombs fall into empty ocean while enemy ships sailed on untouched. Thorne had stood before them with blueprints and calculations. Gentlemen, I propose we mount the M189 775mm field gun on the B-25 Mitchell bomber. Silence, then laughter. Colonel Dutch Kramer had led the response. Kramer, with his Harvard accent and his engineering degrees and his complete faith in mathematics. General Thorne, the recoil alone would tear the wings off. The physics are non-negotiable. The physics, Thorne had said the Titanic was unsinkable. More laughter, polite, dismissive. The vote was 9-1. Thorne had returned to his quarters that night and found the order waiting, typed on official letterhead, stamped and signed. Cease all non-standard weapons research, effective immediately, by order of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He'd held that order over his desk lamp, watched the paper brown and curl, watched it burn. David's last letter had said it all, written 3 weeks before Pearl Harbor. Dad, somebody needs to think different. The old ways aren't working. By the time the brass figures it out, it'll be too late. 3 weeks later, David died when a torpedo opened the Arizona like a tin can. Now Thorne stands in a sweltering tent 8,000 miles from home, watching the same mistakes kill different boys. "Sir?" Reynolds is still waiting. Thorne turns from the map. His voice comes out quiet, dangerous. "Get me Dr. Walsh on the next flight from Brisbane and find Captain Sutherland." "Sutherland's in the stockade, sir." "I know, get him anyway." Midnight, August 16th. The supply depot sits at the edge of the airfield. Corrugated metal sheds guarded by 2 privates who smoke and complain about the mosquitoes. They don't notice the general who walks past wearing no rank insignia. Thorne moves between crates marked with stenciled letters, artillery shells, spare parts, things that won't be missed for weeks. He finds what he needs in Shed 7. 3M 1897 75mm field guns, 900 pounds of steel each, built to kill tanks and bunkers, designed to be bolted to the earth or mounted on armored vehicles weighing 30 tons, never meant to fly. Thorne runs his hand along the barrel, cold metal, unforgiving. He thinks about David, about the 18 men who died today, about how many more will die tomorrow if nothing changes. He pulls out the requisition forms he prepared. The forms are perfect, official stamps, authorization codes, everything correct except one detail. The signature isn't his superior's. It's Thorne's own hand, practiced for hours until the forgery became flawless. This is treason. Court-martial at minimum, execution if they want to make an example. Thorne signs all 3 forms. By dawn, the guns are crated and marked for artillery training exercises. The trucks roll out before anyone asks questions. Dr. Theodore Walsh arrives on the afternoon flight from Brisbane. 52 years old, MIT-trained, civilian contractor. He's supposed to be improving bomb-fusing mechanisms. Safe work. Theoretical. Instead, Thorne meets him on the runway and says 6 words. "I need you to make cannons fly." They walk to the maintenance hangar. It's 110 degrees inside. The B-25 Mitchell sits like a wounded bird, its glass nose catching the light. Walsh stops, stares. "You're serious?" "Completely." "General, the recoil from a 75mm will be 12,000 pounds of force, I know. The airframe is rated for 8,000 maximum." Walsh removes his glasses, cleans them, puts them back on like he's hoping the aircraft will disappear. This is mathematically impossible. So was splitting the atom. Thorne crosses his arms. "We're doing it anyway." "Why me?" Thorne pulls a folder from his jacket, opens it. Inside, a single name. Ensign Peter Walsh, U.S. Navy. Died December 7th, 1941, USS Arizona. The color drains from Walsh's face. "Your son and mine died on the same ship. Same day. Same explosion." Thorne's voice drops. "They died because nobody questioned whether the old methods still worked. I'm done not questioning." Walsh's hands shake. He closes the folder. "How much time do we have?" "Pentagon investigators arrive in 2 weeks. We need a working prototype before then." "That's insane." "Yes." Thorne meets his eyes. "Are you in?" Walsh looks at the bomber, at the 75mm gun waiting in its crate, at the future and the past colliding in this sweltering hangar. 2 weeks, he says. "If the math doesn't work, we stop." They shake hands. Neither mentions that stopping was never really an option. The work begins that night. First, remove the glass nose, the bombardier's station with its optical bomb sight and plexiglass canopy. All of it comes off, sword and pried and discarded, in its place steel. 1/4-inch armor plate welded into a blunt snout. The cannon slides forward, 900 pounds of violence mounted where precision instruments used to sit. The breech sits so close to the pilot's seat that he could reach out and touch it. The aircraft immediately tips forward, nose heavy. Dangerous. Walsh runs the calculations. We need 600 pounds of ballast in the tail. Lead weights? Anything. Lead, sandbags, prayers. 600 pounds or this thing lawn darts on takeoff. Mechanics bolt lead bars into the tail section. Rough, ugly. The aircraft sits level again but looks wrong, unbalanced, like something that should never leave the ground. The hydraulic recoil system takes 3 days to design. Walsh works around the clock. Coffee and cigarettes and differential equations. The math fights him at every step. The gun fires, he explains to Thorne on day 4, and transfers 12,000 pounds of force into an airframe designed for 8. Something has to give. Make it give slowly. That's not how physics. Make it work, Theodore. Walsh designs a buffer system, hydraulic pistons that absorb the shock over 6 inches of travel instead of instantaneous impact. It might work, it might explode. The math says both are equally possible. On the 5th night, Walsh finds Thorne alone in the hangar. The general sits on a toolbox, staring at the modified bomber. In his hands, David's photograph. Second thoughts? Walsh asks. Thorne doesn't look up. Every second. We can stop. Tell Pentagon it was explored and rejected. And then what? Watch more boys die while we follow procedures that don't work? Thorne sets the photo down. David's last letter said somebody needed to think different. I didn't act fast enough. He paid for that. This won't bring him back. No. Thorne stands. His voice hardens. But it might keep somebody else's son alive. That's enough. Walsh nods slowly. Peter would have liked you. David would have liked you too. They stand together in silence. 2 fathers, 2 ghosts, 1 impossible machine. I'm going to make it work, Walsh says finally. Not because the math says I can, because Peter and David deserve better than what killed them. The next morning, Walsh submits his final calculations. 60% chance of catastrophic structural failure on first firing. 40% chance the aircraft holds together. 0% chance it flies like it's supposed to. Thorne reads the report, signs it without changing a word. Build it, he says, August 21st, 0600 hours. The stockade sits behind the main camp. Barbed wire, guard tower, 6 cells for men who broke regulations. Captain Malcolm Sutherland occupies Cell 3, 29 years old, 47 combat missions, 0 ship kills, and 1 court-martial pending for violating altitude restrictions during a bombing run that still missed. Mac sits on a metal bunk, reading a letter from his mother for the 5th time. She writes about Texas, about the ranch, about weather and cattle and everything that matters when you're not dying in the Pacific. Footsteps outside. The guard unlocks the door. On your feet, Captain, you got a visitor. Mac expects his defense attorney. Instead, Major General Augustus Thorne walks in. Mac snaps to attention. Sir? At ease. Thorne waves off the formality. How's the food? Better than the flying, sir. Thorne almost smiles. I read your file. 47 missions, flew lower than orders specified 16 times, never got a hit anyway. No excuse, sir. I'm not looking for excuses, Captain. I'm looking for a pilot crazy enough to fly a 75mm cannon into a destroyer's face. Mac blinks. Sir, Thorne explains, the gun, the bomber, the physics that say it shouldn't work, the desperation that says it has to. You're the best pilot in theater, Thorne says, also the most reckless, perfect combination. Sir, this sounds like suicide. Probably is, Thorne's voice goes flat. But staying at 20,000 feet is definitely suicide, just slower. I'm offering you a chance to die doing something that might actually matter. Mac sits down. Processes. What happens to my court-martial? You fly this mission, I make it disappear. Charges dropped, clean record. And if I refuse? 6 months stockade, dishonorable discharge. You go home and explain to your mother why you chose safety over trying. The cell goes quiet. Mac thinks about 47 missions, 47 times watching bombs fall uselessly into the ocean, 47 times flying home with empty racks and full shame. When do I start? Thorne exhales, relief he didn't know he was holding. Now. They walk to the hangar together. Mac sees the bomber and stops cold. The nose looks like something from a fever dream. Steel snout, cannon barrel jutting forward, the whole aircraft sitting heavy and wrong. Jesus Christ, Mac whispers. He's not available, Thorne says. Just us. Mac walks around the plane slowly, touches the cannon mount, looks into the modified cockpit. This thing flies? In theory. What does theory say about landing? Theory says, don't crash. Mac laughs. It's not a happy sound. Who else is crazy enough to crew this? We're building the team now. I need gunners, a loader, men who understand they might not come back. You're asking for volunteers for a suicide mission. I'm asking for believers in a mission that could change how we fight this war. Thorne meets his eyes. I lost my son at Pearl Harbor. He died because we moved too slow to adapt. I won't let that keep happening. Not on my watch. Mac hears the pain underneath the words, the guilt, the determination. You're betting everything on this. I already bet everything. Question is whether you're in. Mac looks at the aircraft again. It's ugly, dangerous, probably doomed. It's also the first thing in this war that makes sense. I'm in, sir, but if this kills me, my ghost writes one hell of a haunting. Thorne's first real smile in months. I'll deserve it. The crew comes together over 3 days. Sergeant Vincent Castellano, 24, Philadelphia. Welder before the war. He'll be the loader, the man who has to wrestle 15-pound shells in turbulence and G-forces while sitting in the nose with a cannon that might explode. Vin is 6'2" and strong enough to bend rebar, also terrified of heights. Sir, he says, when Thorne explains the job, I fix things. I don't break them. War doesn't care what you fixed back home, Thorne says. Question is, what you'll do now? Vin thinks about his wife, 8 months pregnant, waiting in Philadelphia for news that might never come. How much does this pay? Standard hazard rate, plus I'll personally write your family if the worst happens. Sir. Vin's voice cracks slightly. Why me? Because you're strong enough to do the job and smart enough to know what it costs. That's the man I need. Vin signs on. Lieutenant Frank Rhodes becomes co-pilot for Gunship 2. Texas ranch country, steady hands, quiet voice. The kind of man who does his job without complaint and never asks for recognition. The rest of the crews fill in. Gunners, navigators, radio operators. 48 men total across 4 aircraft. Thorne meets with each one personally, learns their names, their hometowns, what they left behind. He writes their names in a notebook he keeps in his jacket pocket, right next to David's photograph. If they die, he'll remember who they were. August 25th, evening. The telegram arrives during dinner. Reports of unauthorized weapons testing received. Explain within 48 hours. Pentagon investigation team deploying August 29th. Dutch Kramer, Colonel. Thorne reads it twice, then holds it over a candle until it catches fire. Walsh sees him do it. Bull, they're coming. I know. We need 2 more weeks minimum before... We have 4 days. Thorne drops the burning telegram into an ashtray. We fly August 29th. 0500 hours, ready or not. The hydraulics aren't tested. The gun might fail on first shot. The entire airframe could... I know the risks, Theodore. I also know what happens if we wait. Thorne turns to face him. Pentagon shuts us down. Court martials me, sends you home. Boys keep dying. David and Peter stay dead for nothing. Walsh takes off his glasses, rubs his eyes. 4 days isn't enough time. Then we make it enough. You're gambling 12 lives on an untested weapon. Me, I'm gambling 12 lives to save thousands. Thorne's voice drops. I already lost my son to hesitation. I won't lose other people's sons to the same mistake, not when there's a choice. And if we're wrong, if it fails, then I take responsibility. Every death, every consequence mine to carry. Thorne puts his hand on Walsh's shoulder. But we're not wrong. We can't be. There's too much riding on this to be wrong. Walsh looks at the modified bomber, at the cannon waiting to prove impossible things possible. 4 days, he says finally. God help us all. That night, Thorne visits the crew quarters. Mac and the others are playing cards. The game stops when the general walks in. Tomorrow we start final prep, Thorne says. Mission is August 29th, pre-dawn launch. Silence. Vin speaks first. Sir, is it ready? Thorne doesn't lie. No, but it's all we've got. He looks at each man, these 48 lives he's betting, these names in his notebook. I want you to know what you're flying into. The hydraulics are untested. The cannon might tear the plane apart. The Japanese will shoot back. Some of you might not come home. Mac sets down his cards. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. Why are we doing this, really? Thorne pulls out David's photograph, shows them. My son died 8 months ago because we were too slow to change. I'm done being slow. I'm done watching good men die for procedures that don't work. He puts the photo away. This mission is a gamble, but doing nothing. That's not a gamble, that's a guarantee. Guaranteed that nothing changes. Guaranteed that more of you die the same way. He meets each man's eyes. I'm asking you to trust me, to risk everything on an idea that might fail. I can't promise you'll survive. I can only promise that if this works, it matters, it changes how we fight, it saves lives. The silence stretches. Then Vin stands. I'm in, sir. Frank Rhodes nods from across the room. Me too. One by one, they all stand. Mac last. Sir, if this kills us, you're giving the eulogy. Deal. Thorne leaves them to their card game. His hands shake slightly as he walks back to his tent. 4 days until everything changes. 4 days until he proves the Pentagon wrong or dies trying. 4 days until Augustus Thorne breaks every rule or becomes another casualty of following them. He sits at his desk, picks up David's photograph one more time. I'm doing this for you, he whispers. I hope to God I'm right. Outside, the Pacific night swallows the words. Tomorrow, the real work begins. August 27th, 6:15 in the morning. The runway shimmers in the heat already. Dawn breaks red over Port Moresby, and the modified B-25 sits at the end of the strip like something that shouldn't exist. Augustus Thorne stands in the command post, radio headset clamped over greying hair, hands gripping the table edge hard enough to make his knuckles white. He cannot fly this mission. Too old. Regulations. The irony isn't lost on him, breaking every rule except the one that keeps him on the ground. So he watches and listens and prays to a God he stopped believing in when David died. Mac's voice crackles through the radio. Tower, this is Gunship 1, pre-flight complete, ready for takeoff clearance. Gunship 1. They haven't earned that name yet. First, they have to survive. Cleared for takeoff, Thorne says, his voice steady, despite everything. Execute Test Protocol Alpha. Copy. Beginning roll. Through binoculars, Thorne watches the bomber move. Slow at first. Too slow. The weight. The modifications. Everything wrong about this aircraft shows in how it struggles down the runway. 1,500 feet. 2,000. 2,500. The nose lifts, barely. 3,200 feet of runway and the wheels finally leave asphalt. The climb rate is pathetic, 500 feet per minute. A standard B-25 does 1,200. This is not a standard B-25 anymore. Walsh stands beside Thorne. The engineer hasn't slept in 40 hours, coffee stains on his shirt. Calculator in one hand, rosary in the other. Hydraulics showing yellow, Mac reports. Oil pressure in the caution range. Proceed to target, Thorne says. Walsh grabs his arm. Bull, we should scrub. Those readings are exactly what the math predicted. Thorne doesn't take his eyes off the aircraft. We knew it would run hot. Question is whether it holds. And if it doesn't, then we learn something. The target sits 15 miles offshore, a coral reef marked with orange buoys. No people, no ships, just rock and water, and the question of whether physics will bend or break. 6:47. Approaching target, Max says. Beginning attack run. Thorne can't see the bomber anymore, just a speck against blue sky. Everything happens through voices and static. Altitude 2,000 feet, descending to attack profile. Inside that speck, Mac in the pilot seat, hands tight on the yoke. Frank Rhodes beside him calling numbers. Vin Castellano in the nose with the cannon, wrestling a 15-pound shell into the breech. Vin's voice comes through, young, scared. Gun loaded. Jesus, this thing is huge. Stay focused, Max says. 30 seconds to firing point. Thorne closes his eyes, sees David's face, sees the Arizona burning, sees 18 men who died yesterday. Opens his eyes, grips the radio tighter. Fire when ready. 20 seconds of silence, then the world changes. Mac's voice, tight, controlled panic.
Cannon away! Christ! Losing altitude! Nose drop! Can't hold! The radio fills with noise, alarms, warnings, the sound of metal under stress that shouldn't be under that stress.
Walsh's calculator drops from his hand. Thorne leans into the microphone. Mac, report. 450 feet drop, hydraulics screaming, fighting controls. Through the binoculars, Thorne can see it now. The aircraft falling, not crashing, not yet, but dropping like a stone thrown from the sky. 300 feet above the water. 200, 150, Mac's voice again, strained, every word an effort. Got it, leveling out. The bomber pulls up, barely, climbs back to 500 feet and holds. Silence except for heavy breathing over the radio. Then Vin, shaky, awed. Sir, the target, it's gone. Thorne swings the binoculars to the reef, where coral used to be, a crater, water pouring in, rock pulverized. The 75mm shell hit exactly where Mac aimed and erased a chunk of reef the size of a truck. The gun works. The aircraft survived. Impossible just became possible. Bring her home, Thorne says quietly. Sir, Mac's voice is different now, harder. Hydraulics are at 65%, multiple red lights. Something's broken bad. Walsh grabs the radio. How bad? Fluid everywhere, pressure dropping. This system won't last another shot. Can you make it back? Yeah.
But, sir... Mac pauses. This bird won't fly combat like this. 3 shots maximum before catastrophic failure, maybe less. Thorne and Walsh lock eyes. 65%. 1 test shot and the system is already dying. RTB, Thorne orders. We'll assess on the ground. The landing is controlled chaos. Hydraulics failing, 1 engine running hot. Mac brings it in hard, fast, every foot of runway disappearing under screaming tires. The bomber stops 30 feet from the end of the strip.
Crews rush forward. Thorne walks, slow, deliberate, like a man approaching a grave. The aircraft sits silent now, oil pooling underneath, hydraulic fluid dripping, the cannon barrel still hot enough to shimmer. Mac climbs out first. His flight suit is soaked through, face pale, hands shaking. He salutes. Mission complete, sir. Weapon functional, aircraft damaged. Thorne returns the salute. Good work, Captain. Vin emerges next. He makes it 3 steps before vomiting into the grass. The stress, the G-forces, the realization of what almost happened. Frank helps him up. Neither man speaks. Walsh is already under the aircraft, inspecting, calculating, running his hands over torn metal and broken seals. He emerges 15 minutes later, covered in oil, face grim. 3 shots, he says. Maximum. After that, the hydraulics fail completely. The gun fires, but the aircraft can't handle the recoil. It'll tear itself apart mid-flight. Can you fix it? In 2 weeks, maybe. 2 months, certainly. Walsh wipes his hands on a rag. We have 48 hours. Thorne looks at his watch. Pentagon investigators land tomorrow evening. August 29th, 1700 hours. The combat mission has to launch before they arrive, before Colonel Kramer can shut everything down, before the last chance disappears. August 29th, 0500 hours, pre-dawn launch, into combat, with broken hydraulics, with a weapon that might kill the crew before the enemy gets a chance. "Gentlemen," Thorne says to the assembled crews, "we need to talk." They gather in the hangar, 48 men, plus Walsh, plus Thorne. The general doesn't sugarcoat it. The test was successful. The gun works, the aircraft survived, but the hydraulics are damaged beyond field repair. He lets that sink in. Intelligence confirms a Japanese convoy moving south tomorrow, 3 destroyers, 2 transports, 900 troops heading for Guadalcanal. If they land, our Marines die. Mac crosses his arms. "Sir, what are you saying?" "I'm saying we launch tomorrow, 0500, combat mission, full loadout." Silence. Then Vin. "Sir, you just said the hydraulics are broken." "They are. So the plane might fall apart when we fire." "It might. And you want us to fly it anyway?" Thorne meets his eyes. "I'm not ordering anyone, I'm asking. There's a difference." Frank speaks up, quiet, measured. "General, if we go down, those 900 Japanese still land." "True, but if we don't try, they definitely land, and Marines definitely die." Thorne pulls out his notebook, opens it. "I have 48 names written here, yours. I promised myself I'd remember everyone I asked to do this. If you fly tomorrow and don't come back, I'll visit your families personally. I'll tell them the truth. That I asked you to risk everything on a broken aircraft and a desperate idea." He closes the notebook. "I won't lie to them, won't tell them it was worth it or that you died heroes. I'll tell them you died because I made a choice, my responsibility." The hangar is silent except for the sound of wind through open doors. Mac looks at his crew. They look back. Some kind of unspoken conversation happening. Finally, Mac turns to Thorne. "Sir, can I speak to my men? Privately?" "Of course." Thorne and Walsh step outside. They wait in the heat, not talking, just existing in the space between what was asked and what might be answered. 15 minutes pass. The hangar door opens. Mac steps out. "We're in, sir. All of us." Thorne feels something crack inside his chest. Relief, guilt, pride, fear, everything at once. "You're sure?" "No, sir, but we're in anyway." Mac's jaw sets. "Those Marines didn't ask to be there either. Somebody's got to try." "Thank you, Captain." "Don't thank us yet. Save it for after we land." "Or if we land," Thorne thinks but doesn't say. That night, August 28th. Thorne can't sleep. Again. Seems like he never sleeps anymore. He sits in his tent writing letters. 48 of them, one for each crew member's family. "Dear Mrs. Castellano, your husband Vincent volunteered for a mission I asked him to fly. The aircraft was damaged. The risks were known. He went anyway because somebody had to try. If he doesn't come home, know that I sent him. My decision. My responsibility. I'm sorry." He seals it, writes the next one, and the next. By midnight, all 48 letters sit on his desk, stamped, ready. He hopes to God he never has to send them.
Walsh finds him at 0200. The engineer looks worse than Thorne feels. Can't sleep either, Thorne asks. Keep running the numbers, they don't improve. Walsh sits down heavily. Bull, we're sending them into a death trap. We're sending them into a chance. A chance built on broken hydraulics and hope. Hope and necessity. Thorne pours 2 glasses of whiskey from a bottle he's been saving. Hands one to Walsh. Peter and David didn't get a chance. Someone decided procedures were more important than adapting. I won't make that mistake. And if we're wrong, if they all die, then I live with it, every day, every name. Thorne drinks. But if we don't try, Marines die for certain. The Tokyo Express keeps running. Nothing changes. At least this way, something might. They sit in silence, 2 fathers, 2 ghosts, 48 lives hanging in the balance. Peter would have done it, Walsh says finally. Would have flown that mission, would have trusted the math even when it didn't add up. David too. Thorne refills both glasses. They were braver than us. No, they were younger, hadn't learned to be afraid yet. Maybe that's the same thing. At 0430, Thorne walks to the flight line. The crews are already there, running final checks, loading ammunition. 48 men preparing to fly something that shouldn't work against an enemy that won't hesitate. Mac sees him coming, salutes. We're ready, sir. Thorne looks at the modified bombers. In the pre-dawn darkness, they look even more wrong, machines built from desperation and mathematical long shots. Mac, I want you to know Sir. Mac cuts him off. Whatever you're about to say, don't. We made our choice. You made yours. Now we see if it works. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. But at least we tried something different. Mac extends his hand. See you when we get back, General. Thorne shakes it. Good hunting, Captain. The crew's board. Engines cough to life. 4 modified B-25s taxi into position. Thorne returns to the command post, puts on the radio headset, and waits for the world to change. 500 hours exactly. Tower Gunship 1 requesting clearance. No. Cleared for takeoff. Good luck. We'll need it. The bombers roll, one after another, heavy, struggling, clawing their way into the sky. Thorne watches them disappear into the darkness. 4 aircraft, 48 men. Everything riding on broken hydraulics and desperate hope. He sits down at the radio. Now comes the hardest part. Waiting. 5:15. The sound of vehicles approaching. Military trucks. Too many of them. Walsh looks out the window, goes pale. Bull! Thorne already knows. The door opens. Colonel Dutch Kramer walks in, Harvard-educated, Pentagon certified, absolutely certain of his authority. Behind him, 6 military police with sidearms and handcuffs. Major General Augustus Thorne, Kramer says formally. You are under arrest for unauthorized operations, misappropriation of military assets, falsification of official documents, and willful disobedience of direct orders. Thorne doesn't stand, doesn't move. Colonel, I'm in the middle of a combat operation. An illegal operation. That ends now. Kramer nods to the MPS. Take him into custody. In 3 hours. Thorne's voice could cut steel. After my aircraft return. Not before. You don't give orders anymore, General. Then shoot me, Colonel. But I'm not leaving this radio until my men are back. Kramer and Thorne lock eyes. A battle of wills. Regulations versus necessity. Everything the war has become condensed into this moment. Finally, Kramer speaks. You have until 0800 hours. Then you're in cuffs whether your bombers are back or not. Understood. The MPs take positions around the room, weapons ready, watching Thorne like he might bolt. He doesn't care. His world has shrunk to the radio and the voices of 48 men he's sent into danger. 6:30. Mac's voice, calm, professional.
Command, Gunship 1. Contact bearing 270. 3 destroyers, 2 transports, beginning approach. G. Thorn leans forward. Copy. Execute at discretion. Through the radio, the sound of engines changing pitch, aircraft descending, wind noise increasing. Mac again. Going low, real low, Vin's voice, young, scared. Loaded, gun ready. Oh God, this is really happening. Stay calm, Mac says. Just like practice. Line up, breathe, fire. The formation splits, each bomber picking targets, coordinated, rehearsed, first attack run. Gunship 4, Lieutenant Collins's bird. Radio crackles. Target locked, closing to 800 yards, taking fire. Sound of machine guns, theirs and the enemy's, tracers both ways. Then the cannon, even through the radio, Thorn can hear it, feel it. A sound that doesn't belong in the sky. Miss! Shot went wide, target maneuvering, coming around for second. Gunship 2, Frank Rhodes, co-piloting. 600 yards, steady, firing. The boom. Hit! She's bleeding. Smoke from the bow. Hydraulics damaged. We're hurt, but flying. Thorn grips the radio. 2 shots fired. 1 miss. 1 hit. Not enough. The Japanese are reacting now. Evasive maneuvers, anti-aircraft fire intensifying. This is the moment. This is where procedures say pull back, regroup, try again later. Procedures have failed for 8 months. Mac's voice, different now, harder. Gunship 1 going in, closing to 200 yards. Walsh gasps. That's suicide range.
Yee, that's effective range, Thorn says quietly. Radio noise, alarms, warnings, flak bursting, tracers ripping past. 180 yards, taking hits, starboard engine hit, compensating, Vin screaming, loaded, gun ready, Mac, ice cold. Steady, steady. The sound, not just the cannon firing, the sound of everything that comes after, recoil slamming through the airframe, metal screaming, hydraulics dying. 9 seconds of silence, 9 seconds where Thorn doesn't breathe, doesn't move.
Doesn't exist except as prayer. Then Mac, breathless, triumphant, disbelieving. Direct hit! She's breaking apart. Destroyer is breaking in half. Secondary explosions. She's going down. Walsh jumps up. They did it. They actually... Different voice cuts through. Gunship 3, Lieutenant Morrison. Terror replacing training. Controls not responding. Hydraulics completely gone. We're losing altitude. Thorn's blood turns to ice. Morrison, status. They can't pull up. Altitude dropping fast. Morrison, do you have... Static. White noise. Then nothing. 6 men. Lieutenant Morrison. His co-pilot, his crew, gone. The room goes quiet except for breathing and the sound of Kramer shifting his weight. 7:04. The arithmetic of war. 1 destroyer sunk. 6 Americans lost. Thorn forces himself to speak. All gunships, status report. Mac responds. Voice shaky now, adrenaline wearing off. 1 engine, hydraulics dead. We're flying, but barely. Heading home. Frank Rhodes from Gunship 2. Engine fire contained, hydraulics failing, can make it back. Gunship 4. Damaged but operational, RTB. Copy all, get back safe. 7:48. The bombers limp home, 3 where 4 left. Thorn stands on the runway, watches them land. Gunship 1 touches down hard, skids, stops. Mac emerges, covered in oil and hydraulic fluid. Face streaked with smoke. He salutes mechanically. Mission complete, sir. 1 destroyer confirmed sunk. Gunship 3 lost with all hands. I know, good work anyway. Doesn't feel good. It never does. Kramer appears at Thorn's shoulder. The MP's with him. Major General Thorn, extend your hands. The handcuffs click shut. Cold metal. Final. You have the right to... I know my rights, Colonel. Thorne looks at Mac, at the surviving crews, at Walsh. It worked. Remember that. When they try to bury this, remember it worked. The MPs lead him away. Behind him, one destroyed Japanese destroyer, 6 dead Americans. Everything changed. Whether that matters depends on what happens next. October 12th, 1942. The Pentagon. The courtroom isn't really a courtroom, just a conference room with flags and a long table where 5 generals sit in judgment. But the weight feels the same. Augustus Thorne stands at attention. No handcuffs today. They took those off 3 hours ago, but he can still feel where the metal pressed against his wrists for 6 weeks. 6 weeks in a cell, 6 weeks of silence, 6 weeks waiting to learn if he'd die for being right. The charges read like a novel. 17 counts. Fraud. Falsification of official documents. Misappropriation of military assets. Unauthorized weapons testing. Willful disobedience of direct orders. Endangerment of personnel. Each one carries years. Some carry death. Colonel Kramer stands to prosecute. He's good at this. Harvard law before the uniform, every word precise, every argument airtight. Gentlemen of the board, the facts are simple. Major General Thorne forged requisition orders, stole military property, conducted unauthorized testing, and sent men into combat with defective equipment. Kramer pauses. 6 men died, Lieutenant Morrison, his entire crew. They died because General Thorne gambled their lives on a theory. The room is silent. Thorne doesn't look away, doesn't flinch. He knew this was coming. The accused claims necessity, Kramer continues, claims his innovation saved lives, but necessity does not override law, does not excuse fraud, does not justify sending men to their deaths in experimental aircraft. Kramer presents the evidence. Documents, testimony, math proving the hydraulics were damaged, proving Thorne knew, proving he sent them anyway. It's damning. All of it. Then the defense speaks. Thorne's attorney is a captain named Williams, young, nervous, completely outmatched. But he has something Kramer doesn't. Gun camera footage. The room darkens. A projector clicks on. Grainy black and white. The view from Gunship One's nose camera. The ocean. The destroyer. Growing larger, closer. Tracers reaching out like fingers trying to swat them from the sky. The reticle steadying. The moment of firing. Flash. The shell impacts. Punches through steel. Detonates inside. The destroyer doesn't just take damage, it breaks. The hull splits. Crew scrambling. Water rushing in. 47 seconds from hit to sinking. The footage ends. Lights come back on. Williams speaks quietly. That destroyer was carrying 900 Japanese troops. Intelligence confirms none reached shore. Our Marines at Guadalcanal faced 900 fewer enemy soldiers because of General Thorne's decision. He sets down more documents. After August 29th, Japanese convoy operations changed. No more daylight runs. No more Tokyo Express. Enemy supply lines disrupted. Why? Because one general refused to accept that the old methods were the only ones available. Williams looks at the board. 6 men died, that's true, but how many lived because of what they proved? 50, 500? We'll never know the exact number. We only know the destroyer that didn't deliver its troops, the supplies that didn't reach the enemy, the Marines who survived because doctrine had to change. The generals confer, quietly, heads together. Then the senior officer, General Harrison, 63, 3 stars, speaks. General Thorne, stand. Thorne rises. This board has reviewed the evidence, the charges, the testimony. Harrison's face gives nothing away. We have also reviewed communications from Admiral Nimitz, from Marine commanders at Guadalcanal, from intelligence officers tracking Japanese naval operations. He pauses. Their testimony is unanimous. Your innovation altered the course of operations in the Southwest Pacific, saved American lives, changed how we prosecute this war. Thorne feels something loosen in his chest, not relief, not yet. However, Harrison's voice hardens. You violated direct orders, forged documents, misappropriated government property, endangered personnel with defective equipment. These are not minor infractions. The room holds its breath. This board finds you guilty on all 17 counts. The words land like bombs. Thorne doesn't move, doesn't react, just stands there taking it. However, Harrison continues, in light of the operational success and the recommendation of senior commanders, this board recommends all charges be dropped. Further, we recommend immediate promotion to Lieutenant General. The room erupts, not celebration, confusion. How can he be guilty and promoted? Kramer shoots to his feet. Sir, with respect, sit down, Colonel. Harrison doesn't look at him. He's looking at Thorne. General Thorne, you broke every rule. You gambled lives. You deserve court-martial, and you're getting a promotion. Because sometimes, rarely, but sometimes, being right matters more than being obedient. He stands. The other board members follow. Charges dropped. Promotion approved. You return to duty, effective immediately. Thorne should feel victorious, vindicated, proven right. Instead, he feels hollow. Sir, he says, I don't want a promotion. The room goes silent. Harrison blinks. Excuse me? The promotion. I don't want it. Thorne's voice is steady. I don't want recognition. I want authorization to build 500 more gunships. I want the B-25G in full production. I want procedures changed so no more boys die following methods that don't work. Harrison stares at him, then slowly smiles. Request granted, and you're getting the promotion anyway. Overruled, General, dismissed. Thorne salutes, walks out of the courtroom, a free man, a lieutenant general, and still haunted by 6 names he'll never forget. April 1943. 6 months later. The factory floor in Kansas stretches for 3 football fields, assembly lines, welding torches, the sound of rivets and hammers and progress. B-25G models rolling off the line, 43 per week, each one with a 75mm cannon in the nose, each one proof that impossible can become standard. Thorne walks the floor, inspecting, checking. His new rank sits uncomfortable on his shoulders. Walsh is with him. The engineer looks better now. Sleep. Real food. Not working 20-hour days in sweltering hangars. 405 built, Walsh says. Another 200 on order. The Marine Corps wants them. Navy's interested. Even the British are asking questions. Good. They stop at aircraft number 73. Fresh paint, clean metal. Perfect. We did it, Bull. Changed the war. We started something, Thorne corrects. David and Peter and Morrison and his crew, they paid for it. We just followed through. Walsh nods slowly. Have you visited the families? All 6. Last one was yesterday. Morrison's family, a farm in Iowa. His mother answered the door and knew immediately why a general was standing there. She'd invited him in, made coffee, sat across from him with hands that shook slightly. Tell me about my son, she'd said.
Not the mission. Him. Did you know him? Thorne had, barely. 3 conversations. Morrison had talked about the farm, about harvest season, about coming home to help his father. He was brave, Thorne had told her, braver than I deserved. Did he die for nothing? The question he'd been dreading. Thorne hadn't lied. He died for an idea I asked him to prove. My decision, my responsibility. I wish I could trade places with him. I can't. All I can do is make sure his death mattered.
That it changed something. Morrison's mother had cried. Thorne had sat with her, let her rage and grieve and blame him. He'd deserved every word. When he'd left, she'd hugged him at the door. "Thank you for telling me the truth," she'd whispered. "Thank you for not saying it was worth it." Now, standing on the factory floor, Thorne pulls out his notebook. The 48 names, Morrison's is first. He's visited all 6 families now, carried the weight, taken the blame. It doesn't make it easier. It just makes it honest. Bull. Walsh's voice pulls him back. "Do you regret it?" The decision? No. Thorne is careful with his words now. "I regret that war forced the choice, but given the same circumstances, I'd make it again." That's not the same as saying it doesn't haunt me. That doesn't make sense. War doesn't make sense, Theodore. We just make the best choices we can and live with the consequences. They walk in silence, past aircraft after aircraft, each one a descendant of that first impossible idea. "Peter would have been proud," Walsh says finally. "David too." Thorne closes the notebook. "They were smarter than us, died before they learned to be afraid. Or died because we were too afraid to change soon enough." December 1944. The war is turning, slowly, painfully, but turning. Thorne sits in his office. Washington, D.C., real coffee. Real windows, everything comfortable except the chair. Reports pile his desk, gunship squadrons across the Pacific, kill counts, success rates, changes in how operations are conducted. The Tokyo Express is dead, hasn't run in a year. Japanese supply lines are choked. American bombers hunt destroyers like wolves. All because someone put a cannon on an airplane and 48 men were brave enough to fly it. Mac walks in, captain no more, major now, decorated, alive. "Sir, you wanted to see me?" "Sit down, Mac." They haven't spoken much since the court-martial. Different assignments, different wars. Mac looks older, they all do. "How many missions?" Thorne asks. 78, gunship runs, every one of them using what we proved. "Losses?" 16 aircraft, 96 crew. Mac's face is stone. "But estimated enemy casualties 4,000, supply disruption incalculable. Marines saved, unknown but significant." The arithmetic again, 96 dead, thousands of enemy dead. Uncounted Americans alive because supply ships sank. Thorne has stopped trying to make that math add up. Numbers don't work for souls, never have. "I'm putting you in for promotion," Thorne says. "Lieutenant Colonel, training command. You'll teach the next generation how to fly these things." "Sir, I'd rather stay operational." "I know, I'm ordering you anyway. You've done enough. Time to let others carry it." Mac nods slowly. "Morrison would have hated that I made it, and he didn't."
Morrison would have been proud you made his death matter. You really believe that? I have to. Thorne looks out the window. Because if I don't, then I sent him to die for nothing, and I can't live with that. They sit in silence. 2 men who broke rules and survived, carrying the weight of those who didn't. "Sir," Mac says finally, "thank you for being willing to be wrong, even though you were right." "I was lucky, Mac. There's a difference." "No, sir, you were brave."
"There's a difference." November 1960, 18 years later. Augustus Thorne is 74 years old, retired since 48, living in Virginia. Small house, big memories. The newspaper sits on his breakfast table, New A C-130, gunship program approved, based on WWII innovations. The photograph shows a massive aircraft, C-130 transport converted to a flying weapons platform. Cannons, howitzers, firepower that would have seemed impossible in 42, but it's not impossible anymore. Someone proved it could work. "Knock at the door," Thorne answers slowly. Age has bent his back, arthritis in his hands, but his mind is sharp. Malcolm Sutherland stands there, 47 years old, Brigadier General, decorated, distinguished. Mac, sir, thought you'd want to see this. Mac holds up a folder. Inside, technical specifications, deployment plans, the AC-130 program. They're calling it a gunship, Mac says. Direct lineage from what we flew. We didn't fly it, you did. I just watched. You made it happen. They sit on Thorne's porch. Two old soldiers, 18 years of peace between them and the war. How many of the original crew are left? Thorne asks. Vin Castellano, still in Philly. His daughter, married young. He's a grandfather at 42. Frank Rhodes, ranching in Texas. Me. The rest. Mac trails off. Dead. Disease. Accidents. Time. The war took 6. Peace took the others.
I visit Morrison's grave every year, Mac says. Tell him what we did, how it mattered. Does it help?
No, but I do it anyway. Thorne understands. He's done the same. Different grave. There's something I never told you, Mac continues. That morning, August 29th, before we took off, Morrison pulled me aside, said if he didn't make it, tell his mother he wasn't afraid. Was he? Terrified. We all were. Mac smiles sadly. But he flew anyway. That's the only kind of bravery that matters. They watch the sun set. Virginia hills. Peace. Do you regret it? Mac asks, knowing what it cost. Thorne doesn't answer right away. Thinks about David. About Morrison. About 96 crew members who died flying gunships. About thousands who lived because methods changed. I regret that it was necessary, he says finally. I don't regret that we tried. That's a politician's answer. It's an old man's answer. It's the only honest one I've got. Mac stands to leave, pauses at the door. Sir, for what it's worth, Morrison knew what he was doing. We all did. You didn't send us. We went. There's a difference. Is there? Yes, sir. And if you can't see it, then the war took something from you too. After Mac leaves, Thorne sits alone, thinking, remembering. The next morning he drives to Arlington. The cemetery spreads across hills, white stones, thousands of them, each one a name, a life, a story. He finds David's grave in Section 60, Lieutenant David Thorne, U.S. Navy, December 7th, 1941. Thorne sets down a Model B-25G, small, detailed, the kind you build from a kit. Hey son, he talks to David often, knows it's foolish, knows David can't hear, does it anyway. They're building new gunships based on what we did, a C-130s, you'd love them, massive, powerful, everything the B-25 was but more. Wind moves through the cemetery, dry leaves, quiet. Morrison and his crew, the others, they died proving it could work. I sent them. My choice. I wish... He stops, starts again. I wish it had been me instead. But it wasn't. He lived. They didn't. That's the arithmetic. Unfair. Final. I hope you'd be proud. I hope you'd understand why I did it, why I broke every rule. Thorne's voice cracks slightly. Your last letter said somebody needed to think different. I was just too slow to listen. He sits on the grass. Old man. Old grief. 6 boys died the first mission. 96 total by war's end. But thousands came home because of what we proved. He pauses. The math doesn't work for souls. I've stopped trying to make it balance. A young couple walks past, military, visiting someone. They don't see the old general talking to a gravestone. Or maybe they do and understand. I'm 74 now. Won't be around much longer, but the idea lives. That's something. When rules kill more than they save, break them. Find a better way. Don't wait for permission. He touches the headstone. I love you, son. I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner. I'm sorry about Morrison and the others. I'm sorry. War makes us choose between bad options and worse ones. He stands slowly, joints protesting. But I'm not sorry we tried. That's the only thing I'm sure of anymore. Thorne walks away, leaves the model plane on the grave. Behind him, rows of white stones, names, stories, the cost of every choice ever made in war. Ahead, the exit, the living world, what remains. He doesn't look back. Closing title cards, Major General Augustus Bull Thorne's B-25 gunship program, August to December 1942. 6 prototype aircraft, 387 confirmed enemy kills, 47 ships sunk. The B-25G entered production March 1943, 405 aircraft built by war's end. 96 American airmen died flying gunships, estimated enemy supply disruption incalculable. The 6 airmen lost August 29, 1942 are honored at the National Air Force Museum alongside the aircraft they proved could fly. General Thorne retired 1948, died 1967, age 81. His final words, recorded by his aide, "Tell them the truth. Tell them boys died. Tell them it mattered. Tell them I'd make the same choice again." The AC-130 gunship, direct descendant of Thorne's innovation, remains in service today. Final quote, carved at the Air Force Museum. Rules exist to serve victory. When they prevent it, a leader's duty is clear. Change the rules or change the war. Lieutenant General Augustus Thorne, 1943.